Welcome back to another Featured Illustrator interview. My name is Tamika Grooms, and I'm the Design and Illustration Manager for SCBWI. Every month, we select an Illustrator member to spotlight on the SCBWI website and social media pages to highlight the work that they're doing in the children's illustration market. This month's Featured Illustrator is Cherise Harris. Cherise, welcome to our interview. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to go ahead and hop right into this interview so that everyone can learn more about your work. I know that you've been a member of SCBWI for a little while, and we found your work, even though I've been aware of it for a while, but we found your work on the SCBWI website, and we find featured illustrators in lots of different ways. But I'm glad that we actually get a chance to talk with you today. So let's start it off with learning a little bit about what inspires your work the most.
Well, that's a really loaded question for me, because it's been such a long journey. So when you say inspire my work, I think all the way back to my childhood, because that's where I draw a lot of inspiration from, and that's what motivates me as well. Because what I'm doing now has been a passion of mine for so long. As a child, I always knew that I wanted to be an illustrator. I didn't know it was called, I didn't know that's what it was called, but I knew that's what I wanted to be. And I used to write books and I used to do drawings for the writings. And it was a literal ongoing process since I was about 6 years old. So at the time growing up, the things that I loved were fantasy novels. Like I used to read Animorphs and Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia. And those are the type of stories that still stick with me today and still inspire me today, and keeps me feeling motivated to work. Uh, so right now, I'm a mom and I'm a wife, and I can draw from my past as a child, but also my children now, and it is wonderful to keep the ideas flowing.
Mm-hmm. So if people have been watching my interviews, they'll know that I kind of hop into different questions depending on who I'm speaking with. I asked you that question specifically because I can see it in your work. Like the inspiration is there. And I really wanted to hear about like where, all of that came from in your history to make it come out into your artwork. The picture that we are featuring today is very fantastical. That might not be the best word, but it has an essence of fantasy. And some of my favorite work that's in your portfolio is also fantasy based as well. And we'll show some of that in a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your art process as well, and how you come into getting these drawings to their final stage?
My process varies, because I work in different ways, but it always starts with a sketch. And depending how complicated it is, I might do really quick thumbnails, but sometimes I just go straight into like computer-sized paper, and I start developing the character and the scene with pencil on paper. And I like to use computer paper because I guess there's less pressure. It doesn't feel expensive. And also because I can stick them up if I need to, and instead of it being in a book form. And from the sketch, then I would go on to sometimes I would do a preliminary drawing, which is to just clean up the sketch. And I do that so that I can get things correct in terms of proportions. And I might also take photo reference and of myself, or sometimes I get my daughter when she lets me. She's 5 now, so sometimes I will ask her to pose for me. And depending how I'm working, if I'm working traditionally, which is how I worked for the Carla and the Christmas Cornbread book, um, what I started doing was after I do the preliminary drawing, I have that printed onto the paper that I'm going to use. And that helps a lot because in the past, I used to draw everything out by hand, like from the sketch, I would go straight onto my paper and draw everything out by hand. And now that I'm working, professionally, and you have deadlines and time, it helps a lot to just print everything onto the paper. And I find it also helps in terms of not picking up the pencil when I'm painting, because sometimes I don't like when the inks get murky. And for those, I do use inks, acrylic inks, which comes in the little bottles with the ink droppers, and I do my washes that way. It's a little different to watercolor, even though the end result kind of looks the same, but it's a little different just because the inks, when they're dry, you can't pick it back up with water. And so that adds a little pressure when you're working, but I find I really enjoy it. I started working that way from college at SVA, and which was back in like 2006 to 2009, and I still enjoy that process. But if I'm working digitally, which the piece that you mentioned, that was done digitally, then I would just work straight into the computer sometimes, or sometimes I might, like for the Jerry Changed the Game book, I actually did the line work by hand on paper first and scanned those line drawings and then colored them digitally. So the way I work, my process tends to vary depending on what exactly I'm working on.
Mhm. So is it the book that the story itself that dictates your process, or is it how you feel in the moment, or what you're trying to express as an artist? What kind of dictates the direction that you're going to choose?
I would say both of those, because even if you want to try a different way of working, depending on the book, it still has to feel natural to you. It still has to come from you naturally. So it's a bit of both that determines how I want to work for the project.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I want to hop on over to your website. And so I really want everybody to see your artwork. And I have some questions that I want to ask you about some other things you have on your website as well. So,
Okay.
yeah. Can you see your website?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So this is Cherise's website, and we have lots that I want to talk about here. First of all, let me tell me a little bit about this book that you have, Jerry Changed the Game.
Well, Jerry Changed the Game came out last year, 2023, and that book was written by Dante, and it's about engineer Jerry Lawson. And when that job came to me, it was really exciting for me because I had just watched a bit about his story in a documentary, and I had thought, that I hadn't heard his story before. And I felt like this was a story that needed to be more widely known. So when the job came to me, it was really exciting to be able to tell his story. And it was my first time doing an, a book like this, a biography, where you had to make sure that, the characters you're drawing looks like someone that everyone will, be able to see and know. So you had to make sure that even though it is in illustration form, he's recognizable. So that was an interesting challenge for me. And I've done portraits in the past, and I've always loved doing portraits, so I felt like it was something that I could handle. And it was also about video games, which took me again back to my childhood of playing Super Nintendo in my neighborhood and playing with my sister. So it was a topic as well that I found exciting in terms of trying to draw the more technical aspects of it as well. So it was a really exciting project for me, and a book that I'm really proud of. Um, another another thing, it came at a time when I was pregnant with my second child, my son, and so that was, that added another challenge as well. And so it became a project that was really meaningful to me because, as a mom, you wonder, can I balance, can I do the mom thing and the, and the
Mhm.
work. um so it felt really successful to complete it and see the finished book.
Okay. So since you touched on that, actually, I'm thinking about a couple of things. You started out playing Nintendo, but maybe the gray hair will tell you that I also started out playing Atari back in the day. So this is even before before your
Yeah.
gaming time. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you balance the responsibilities of being a parent, especially because children have needs and with your art.
Yes. When you talk about, what inspires you, my children inspired me, and it's so funny that I actually met my agent just after I had my first child, and I was in that space of, you know am I going to be able to continue working now that I have a child? And I had a period of not getting any work. And that's when my agent discovered my work. And shortly after my daughter, she was born in 2019, and I signed with Painted Words in 2020. The timing was so funny to me, because now you have to balance work and having a baby, and the hours, and that time um, making that time make sense. um, and my husband and my family were a big part in helping to make that possible, because I had that support of somebody to take that time if I needed extra time to work, especially on weekends. Um, and then what helps is obviously, daycare, and trying to create a structure for yourself where, okay, these are the hours that I work during the day. Um, and something else that's important is when we talk about inspiration, is recognizing that you're not always going to feel inspired. It's not always, and that's okay, because, you know, when you have other responsibilities and other things that take your time and your energy, it's okay to say, well, nothing is coming to me right now. And when I have moments like that, then that's when I kind of pivot and I say, okay, this means it's time for me to take a little break and focus on some other things. And a lot of times when you do that, you find, focusing on the other things, the ideas come back to you then, when you take that kind of
Mhm.
pressure away.
Yeah, I always used to say that whenever I would take breaks from my artwork, even though sometimes I wish I was doing it, I would always come back better and be able to create better. My skill level would increase. Um, I had more passion about it, and
Mhm.
I think that those breaks kind of reinvigorate you sometimes. So the
Mhm.
idea of if you don't use it, you'll lose it to me hasn't applied in my life. Those breaks kind of help to feed me. So it's nice to hear you say that as well. Because I don't think it's the same for everybody. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, I have my moments where I'm like, oh, this doesn't, it doesn't feel good, and my husband knows it, that, I say I want to be working, I want to be working. So You have to really be able to be in the moment and accept how it is right now, and without the guilt. I think that's the hard part. You have to be able to put that guilty feeling and that nagging feeling that you need to be working on pause, and just allow yourself to do other things, and kind of refocus your energy a little bit. But what is important, I find as well, is when you are feeling inspired, write down all your ideas and write them down in detail. Because for me, sometimes you have an idea and you're so excited about it, but if you don't write it down, then when you get back to it, you've kind of lost exactly what it was in the beginning, and that kind of like the spirit of what it was in the beginning gets lost. So I have my notes in my phone, and I write down everything in as much detail as I feel at the time. And usually those are story ideas, because I've been really focusing on writing as well as illustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to capture it when it comes. Otherwise it's going to go on to somebody else, because that idea has to find a way to manifest itself somewhere in the world. So keep your notebook, or keep your phone, and in some sort of way where you can capture those ideas, because you'll get them when you're in the shower, or for me, I get them a lot when I go on a specific hiking trail. And so you just have to be ready for it and just capture it when you can.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. So you have several books, and I can see the theme of fantasy and just this imagination that's coming through. And I also see some cultural aspects that are coming through as well. I really love that you have that in your work. You have another more recent book here with Simon and Schuster as well, Carla and the Christmas Cornbread. You want to talk about that real briefly, and then we'll look at your portfolio.
That book actually came out first before Jerry changed the game. That came out in 2021. And that book is really special to me because that was the first book job that came to me after I signed with my agent. And so I just remember being so excited to have an opportunity like that, because it was something I was dreaming about for such a long time. Up until that point, the previous books that you just showed, were when I was freelancing. So straight out of college, I did a lot of freelance work. And so this was the first book I did after signing. So it's always a celebration for me to look back at that book. And that was the book that I did mostly traditionally. And it's a character that you're going to see again. So I'm really excited about Carla and that book.
Nice, nice. All right. So let's hop on over to your portfolio here. Oh, is my computer laughing up?
You have to scroll down and click.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have my webcam in front of my eyes.
Oh, okay.
That's why I couldn't see it. Okay. So I really want to focus on these fantasy ones, some of the first ones that you have in your portfolio. The colors are very rich and lush. I know that I'm pretty sure you said these are digital, maybe? Did you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
But even though it seems like it's digital, it has like a very lush, painterly feel. Um, and I just really enjoyed the fantasy part of it as well. But feel free to talk about these. I'll scroll through a couple of them. I don't want to show all of the website, but yeah.
This piece and like the first few digital pieces that I have are my most recent personal work, and that was me developing my portfolio and exploring things that I haven't gotten to do yet, which is book covers. And I have a dream of doing book covers for middle grade or chapter books. And so this particular one, I was practicing working in a different way. And this was my kind of my first time working a little more rendered in Photoshop, which was new to me. Um, so at the time, I was watching a lot of tutorials and just trying to teach myself how to work more rendered in Photoshop. And I guess I realized the best way to do it is to take what I would do on paper, basically, or on canvas, if I was painting, and apply the techniques that I know from traditional painting to digital painting. And the idea from this for this was drawn from, as I said, my childhood. Everything goes back to my childhood memories. I had a friend in primary school, and we would write stories together, and then we would act it out at break time. We would kind of, act out our story and be running through the school in our little fantasy world. And so this was kind of inspired by that memory. So we have two schoolgirls here in uniform, kind of getting, I guess, transported to a whole fantasy adventure.
Lovely, lovely. And then let's talk about this one. This is the one that we selected for the feature for this month. I'd love to hear anything you want to tell us about this.
Well, this one was from that same period where I was exploring book covers for my portfolio, and what kind of book cover would I like to illustrate. And this was, again, exploring painting in Photoshop, and exploring painting characters of different races, and um, trying to come up with a story of what they would be doing, and just coming up with the adventure. And here we have the portal in the background, and each character has a special object of their own, and it was just creating a story behind what these characters could be doing.
Yeah. Well, I really love this piece, but I also hope that you're tinkering around with actual written ideas for a story to go along with it, because it seems it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I
So
really need to.
yeah. So I would love for you all to poke around on the website and learn a little bit more. Cherise also has some other projects. She works in different media. There's handmade books. Do you actually make these for sale, or are they just a personal project for yourself?
Personal projects.
Okay. Okay. And you also have a background in 3D sculptural work, like puppets?
Yeah, yes, that's another aspect of what I do, that has kind of gone back to childhood as well, which is sculpture. I don't have a lot of examples here, but I do puppet building. Was the most recent way that I've used those kind of sculptural techniques. And most recently, I worked with a local production company making puppets for Cinderella. And so I made a bunch of mouse puppets, and they had a cat, and they had a bird, and it was just a great challenge at the time. I tend to focus more on my book illustration work now, but sculpture is definitely something that I really want to go back to, and I want to see how I can combine my story ideas and characters and illustrations with my love of sculpture.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love puppets. I actually had puppets when I was a child as well. And it wasn't until I joined SCBWI that I realized that there's also lots of other people who love puppets like I do. I even still go to puppet shows here in Atlanta for adults. And when my kids were younger, I would take them to the youth shows as well. But anyway, I love your work, and I'm so happy that we got a chance to feature it. tell us a little bit about why you joined SCBWI and, how it's been a part of your journey.
Well, I joined to have access to resources that can help. I think when you're working freelance, especially, it's good to have somewhere that you can go to answer questions because you're kind of working on your own, a little isolated, and it's great to have a place that you can go to get questions answered and um, also have access to competitions and um, just have a community that you can reach out to.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy I got a chance to talk to you. I hope that we'll be seeing so much more of you and your work. Thank you for your time here today. So,
Thank you so much for having me, and it was a real joy to talk to you today.
absolutely. Oh, one more thing I forgot. Tell them how they can learn more about your work.
Oh, you can find me on Instagram, CheriseHarris.ILLO, or you can find me on Facebook, Cherise Harris Illustration,
Okay. And your website?
CheriseHarrisIllo.com.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, Cherise, thank you so much for being here with me
Thank
today, and
you.
I will chat with you soon.
Thank you.